Inflation isn't prices rising. It's your currency losing value. Here's exactly how the Federal Reserve does it, and why understanding this mechanism changes everything about how you manage your money. Most people blame retailers. They think inflation happens because Walmart decided to charge more, or because greedy companies raised prices. It's not. That's not how it works at all. Here's the truth. Your salary didn't lose its power because stores got greedy. It lost its power because there's more money in the system chasing the exact same amount of stuff. Your purchasing power didn't shrink because prices rose. Your purchasing power shrank because the currency itself was devalued. These sound the same. They're not. One is a symptom, one is the cause. When you understand the difference, everything else clicks into place. Here's how it actually works. Imagine a pizza shop. Simple system. 100 pizzas in inventory, $100 in the town. Each pizza costs $1. That's the baseline. Now the mayor, let's say the Federal Reserve, prints 100 new dollars and puts them into the system. Suddenly there's $200. The pizza shop didn't make new pizzas. The supply is still 100, but now there's twice as much money chasing the same inventory. What happens? The pizzeria raises prices to $2. Now you need $2 to buy the same pizza. Your original dollar buys half. That's inflation. Not because pizzas got better, not because the business raised prices arbitrarily, because the money supply expanded and the purchasing power of your dollar contracted to match. Now here's the second part. Why does the Fed print money in the first place? When the economy slows, the Fed has a problem. They can't force people to spend. They can't make you buy things you don't want. But what they can do is lower the cost of money itself. They print new dollars. They flood the banking system with cheap loans. Businesses borrow at low rates, they hire, they expand, people spend, the economy grows. But, and this is crucial, the bill comes later. That new money has to exit the system eventually, or inflation compounds forever. Here's the third mechanism, and this is where it gets personal. Not all money enters the system at the same time. When the Fed prints dollars, those dollars go first to big banks. Banks use them to buy assets, real estate, stocks, bonds. Prices rise on those assets immediately. The people who got the money first make massive gains. Then the money trickles down. Businesses borrow, hire, and weeks later workers get paychecks with that new money. By then, asset prices have already doubled, so workers can't afford houses. They can't buy stocks at pre-inflation prices. They get the new money last, and by then, everything costs more. Your purchasing power transferred to whoever got the money first. That's the real inflation mechanism, not rising prices. Wealth redistribution built into the currency system itself. Where does this power come from? The Federal Reserve was created in 1913. Before that, inflation was impossible. Why? Because money was backed by gold. You couldn't print a dollar unless you held an equivalent amount of gold in a vault. The supply of money was anchored to the supply of gold. No gold, no new money. Simple. No manipulation possible. In 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt ended the gold standard domestically. Now the Fed could print dollars without physical gold backing. But here's the thing. Even though Americans couldn't exchange dollars for gold, foreign governments still could. So technically, the dollar was still anchored to gold internationally. That lasted until 1971. Then something massive happened. President Nixon ended the international gold standard. Suddenly, foreign governments couldn't exchange their dollars for gold anymore. The dollar was completely untethered from gold. There was no anchor left, no limit, no constraint whatsoever. The Fed could print infinitely. That decision in 1971, called the end of Bretton Woods, ushered in the modern era of fiat currency. From that point forward, the dollar had no physical backing. It had only promises. And the Fed had unlimited printing power. That's when inflation as we know it today began. Here's a real example of what happens when the mechanism breaks. In the 1970s, after Nixon severed the gold link, the Fed printed aggressively. Oil embargoes, wage demands, corporate price hikes, everything spiraled. By 1980, inflation hit 13%. Prices doubled. Wages didn't keep up. People lost purchasing power while the economy simultaneously stalled. That was stagflation. High inflation plus economic stagnation at the same time. The mechanism was broken. To stop stagflation, Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker had to break the cycle. He did something brutal. He stopped printing money. He raised interest rates to 20%. Businesses couldn't afford loans. People couldn't afford mortgages. The economy crashed. Unemployment hit 10%, but it worked. Inflation died. The mechanism reset. Now you might think the Fed learned its lesson, but it didn't. Every economic crisis since the 2008 financial collapse, the 2020 pandemic, the Fed does the exact same thing, prints money. They call it quantitative easing or QE, but it's the same mechanism. Here's how QE actually works. When banks stop lending and the economy freezes, the Fed can't fix it by lowering rates anymore because rates are already near zero. So instead, the Fed buys government bonds directly from the market. They're literally injecting money into the financial system. Printing. Same mechanism as before. Different name. After 2008, the Fed printed trillions. After 2020, they printed even more. The money had to go somewhere. It went into stocks, real estate, crypto, commodities. Asset prices exploded. Meanwhile, people holding cash saw their purchasing power decline year after year. The wealth transfer was invisible but total. Here's where most people get it wrong, and it costs them everything. When inflation hits, people blame companies and demand wage raises to keep up. Wrong angle. The problem isn't external prices rising. The problem is the currency itself is weaker. You can't negotiate your way out of currency debasement. Your company can't give you a raise that outpaces money printing. So, what happens? People panic save cash. They think holding dollars is safe. It's the opposite. Holding cash in an inflationary environment guarantees you lose. Your purchasing power shrinks silently while you sleep. The people who understand the mechanism do something different. They buy assets that rise with the money supply: stocks, real estate, inflation-hedged bonds. Things that increase in nominal price as currency weakens. They own assets, not cash. This single insight is the difference between building wealth and watching it disappear. Understanding this mechanism changes everything. It explains why your parents could buy a house on a single salary and you can't. It's not that your generation is lazier or dumber. The money supply has expanded massively since the 1970s. A house that cost $30,000 in 1975 costs $400,000 today. It's not that houses got better. The dollar got weaker. The Fed printed more currency than goods were produced, so existing goods cost more currency to buy. It explains why your cash savings destroy wealth. Not because of bad luck, because of the currency system itself. If inflation averages 3% per year, you lose 3% of your cash's value annually, just sitting in a bank account. Invisible theft. It explains why the Fed can create money out of nothing, but you can't print cash at home. They have the monopoly. They set the rules. They benefit from the mechanism. Everyone else loses. And it explains why inflation compounds silently. 2% a year seems small, until you realize that 2% a year halves your money's value every 35 years. Your great-grandparents' dollar is worthless now. Your dollar will be worthless to your great-grandchildren, unless you own assets that grow faster than the currency is diluted. This is the mechanism. This is how wealth transfers from savers to asset owners, from people holding cash to people holding real things, from the last people to get the new money to the first. Now you know how it actually works. Here's what to do with this knowledge. Stop complaining about inflation. Start navigating it. Own assets. Diversify. Let your wealth grow faster than the money supply expands. That's how you win. We've covered compound interest, fund types, and now inflation. 3 forces that control your financial life. But these are just the beginning. Next week, we're taking a complete break from finance. No more money, no more currency. We're diving into tech and engineering instead. We're going to explore the mechanisms behind some of the most mind-bending systems humans have ever built. The invisible infrastructure that runs your life. The algorithms you don't understand. Systems so complex most people never question how they actually work. This is where things get interesting. If you learned something here, subscribe. We upload Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Share this with someone who needs to understand inflation, because most people don't, and it's costing them. Thanks for watching. Next up, we're building something totally different.